Thanks everybody for your attendance this morning, and thanks to all that are joining us online. Before we kick off, I'm going to ask Matthew Gilsman, who has kindly attended this morning, to lead us in our own Nadia. So Matthew, over to you.
Schöne Fiena voll toffig alle geren Winder slug Artena ronig hui Svevoids vässers Antira skinser fasta Ni jag för fin tira na fin tral Anoch hens avana vel Leg jale gel kon vas no sel Leg gon is grech Vel lava knabile Shaflev kanig auran vin
It's often said that a country that cannot reflect on its own history is a country without foundation. And only by engaging with the past, questioning our own assumptions, and looking for new perspectives can we build a strong, shared and vibrant culture. This morning we are here at this very special place to commemorate and remember the brave and courageous actions of the members of the Minority Company of the Irish Republican Army. At this time, this day, exactly 100 years ago, members of this parish were on their way to second Mass when a lorry load of RIC men and Black and Tan personnel from Kells were spotted at this bridge. The Crown forces were intent on seizing a large consignment of guns and explosives which the local IRA company had recently buried in the floor of a ruined house just a couple of hundred yards down the lane here behind us. It was the actions of a heroic 10-year-old girl, Molly Riley, who lived locally here in Salford, who raised the alarm. She travelled across the fields in her bare feet to Minalty village, where Pat Riley, the company commandant, lived, and we're very grateful to have members of the Riley family with us here this morning. Within minutes, Pat had rounded up several men and they headed for Salford. The quick thinking of both Molly, aged 10, and Pat, who, I was just reflecting on this morning, was about my age back in 1921, so he was about 25 or 26 at the time, so he was a young man. But it was that quick thinking of both Molly and Pat which was one of the main recipes for success. The events that transpired that January morning would come to be hailed as one of the most brilliant victories on Irish soil by a Meath Chronicle reporter of years later. The Minority Company, made up of Pat Riley, Jimmy and Paddy Curran, Mick Govern, Paddy Farley, Paddy Riley, Frank the Sniper Clark, Paddy Sheridan, Michael Riley, and Ned Govern, and indeed others as well. They successfully ambushed and re-seized the precious cargo after a lengthy gun battle. Once the Tans and the policemen realised that they were ill-equipped to fend off the IRA garrison, they retreated and fled the scene. And it's very incidental that the official police report from the time, which was filed, said that there was at least 500 men on the opposing side. Such was the volley of gunfire that the police and the Tans experienced. The IRA company then took control of the armoured car with Jimmy Curran at the wheel. I think Jimmy was the only one who could actually drive at the time, complete with cargo of ammunition and explosives. along with a number of heavy police topcoats, which I'm sure they were very glad to have, they set off for Fia. There, they were joined by members of the Newcastle IRA company, and they worked very closely together. And some of the men that joined with them were Tommy and John Riley, James and Thomas Lynch, and Phil Daly, where they proceeded to set the car alight, having removed some of the valuable parts of the car. Now, I am conscious that in mentioning certain names, you always run the risk of excluding people or not mentioning certain people. But the names that I mention are names that were later recounted in personal testimonies of men that were here on the day and in other news reports, News Chronicle reports, etc., that were later published about the event. So if by accident we have omitted somebody, we do apologise, but we do remember all those that were involved in the IRA company at the time. Today, as a community, we come together to remember these brave men. Let us not underestimate the actions of the Salford ambushers. With the passage of time, it's easy to miss the scale of what was achieved by men and women of the IRA here in Minalty and indeed throughout the country. The odds they faced were enormous by any measure. They faced the largest and most powerful empire the modern era had known. It was also an empire which just a few years previous had been victorious in a world war. The Minalty volunteers had almost no resources and very little training. What they had instead was the support of the people, and this was the foundation for all they had achieved. At all stages, the core principle which motivated the Minalty IRA volunteers was their belief in the right of the Irish people to live in a state under their own direction. In coming here today, we are certainly not the first to recognise and commemorate the events of Salford. I want to acknowledge the late Dickie Gilson. Dickie organised a full programme of events for the 50th anniversary back in late 1970. And in remembering the members of the old IRA who are no longer with us, we also remember Dickie, who shared a commitment to the belief that the founding ideals of our republic deserve to be remembered and to be honoured. The 1916 Proclamation, which is here in front of us, reminds us of a remarkable statement. It was a remarkable statement of modern ideals, and it insists that the Irish nation is diverse and inclusive. In the wonderful commemorations of recent years, the 1916 Proclamation has been brought to the centre of our national consciousness for the first time in many, many years. I'm delighted now to conclude and to call upon Tommy Riley, grandson of the late Pat Riley, the Commandant of the Minalty Irish Republican Army, to please read for us the 1916 Proclamation. Gur míle maith.
Thank you, Paul. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to the flag and strikes for her freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army, having patently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment, and supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the first on her own strength, she strikes in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies, to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the past 300 years, they have asserted it in arms, standing on that fundamental right, and again asserting it in arms in the face of the world. We hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign, independent state, and we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to, and hereby claims, the allegiance of every Irishman and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and of all its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally and oblivious to the differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided a minority from the majority in the past. Until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government representative of the whole people of Ireland and elected by the suffrages of all her men and women, the provisional government hereby constituted will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust for the people. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one who serves that cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity, or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called.
Thanks very much, Tommy. So look, we might just wrap up at that, but just to say a special word of thanks to those who are involved in placing our new plaque here on the bridge. Meath County Council were involved, the McKenna family and Charlie Riley as well in getting the plaque, which will now act as a permanent reminder to all those who pass along this way that this was the location of a very special event. So just to thank you all once again for coming this morning, and thank you for remembering the brave actions of the Minalty Salford ambushers. So thanks very much to you all.